This is Support is Sexy, episode 123, with Charreah K. Jackson, lifestyle and relationships editor at Essence and creator of BossBride.com. Welcome to the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, producer, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I talk to women entrepreneurs who share their journeys and the true stories of their wins and their lessons, and give you insight and inspiration to take your business and your life to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here because you know it just would not be the same without you. And our guest today, let me tell you about Miss Charreah K. Jackson. I have known Charreah for many years. We both work in the same industry, in the industry of media, that is. And I was really taken during this interview by what I'll say is Charreah's perfect mix of Southern charm and worldly self-awareness. That's what I want you to get a taste of during this interview as Charreah shares her story, her journey, not only of her professional life. She is an editor of lifestyle and relationships at Essence. She also is an entrepreneur, the creator of BossBride.com. But really what Charreah shares is just her lessons learned along the way of her journey, which is what I really love about this show, what our guests do during this show. But it is delivered in a way that I think will really resonate with all of you. And of course, I hope you will let me know and let Charreah know how you feel about all that she shares in this episode. So I'm not even going to keep you long with my intro. I really want you to get into her story, into her testimony, really is what it is. But I will tell you some of the things that you'll learn on this episode. Take inventory of your talent and your time, how to determine what your gift is and own it, how you can maximize your wealth and live a life of abundance, why, if you're moonlighting, you should view your job as your biggest client, getting clear on your vision for your life and what that could look like, how to heal your relationship with money, very great conversation about that, taking back your power and making a different choice, being aware of the fact that we live in a culture that gets wealthy off keeping us distracted, the importance of asking yourself what's not working, having the courage to walk away from something that is familiar but has run its course, and the genius of standing up and catching the wave. So, as I always say, I know you're going to enjoy this episode. I really want you to get into it. For more information, you go to supportissexypodcast.com. Charreah mentions a lot of people, resources, coaches, and different things that she really turned to help her get on track or even more self-aware and centered. All of those links will be there. So please go to supportissexypodcast.com, search for Charreah, Charreah, and you'll see all that information there. But for right now, I want you to dive in and catch this wave with Charreah K. Jackson. Here we go. So Charreah, thank you so much for joining me for an episode of Support is Sexy. You know, I'm excited to have you here.
Yes, so excited to be here. I'm a big Support is Sexy fan, so it's such an honor to be on the other side.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, first question. When did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
That's a great question. I really fell in love with entrepreneurship. I think like most entrepreneurs, you start not knowing that's what it's called because you might not even be familiar with that word. I remember being in elementary school and my brother played basketball, and at his basketball games, they sell lemon heads for really cheap for only 5 cents a lemon head. I was like, well, if I buy a lot of lemon heads and sell them on the school bus, because I got to ride the bus like 2 buses to get to school. So I'm on the bus an hour. I could sell lemon heads in the morning. So I would buy like bags full and then sell them for 25 cents. And it was just like this way to make some quick money. So really, I think that was the first time I realized the power of like, I could make my own money. And then of course, as I started a career in media and went into journalism, I really, I never thought I wanted to own my own media company. So I had to find a way, like, how do I use my unique talents and gifts as an entrepreneur? And so I really found that I was able to start doing consulting and other ones. Like, I've always felt it was important that I not have one stream of income. So I think it was more of a like, I don't know. Like some people always know, I knew I always wanted to be a business for myself. That wasn't my reality, but I knew it felt good to be able to make my own money. And so I think that's when I fell in love with it, the idea of like not being dependent on some external factor to make sure that, I had money in my pocket.
Excellent. Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. But really, Atlanta is a city of suburbs. So I was born downtown, but I grew up in Decatur, east side of Atlanta, suburb. And so my mom still lives in the same house that I went home to as a baby. So I'm very fortunate to have had, a place that felt so Southern in so many ways, so hospitable in a stereotypical Southern way, but also, city and access. And so it definitely felt like the best of both worlds. And I grew up in a Black suburb, so I always felt connected to my culture, connected to my people. Like, I celebrated Kwanzaa at my church growing up downtown, Wheat Street Baptist Church. So I always felt this innate, or really not innate, I always felt poured into to know my history as a Black woman and as a person of color in this country.
And I can tell you have that Southern charm. I figured you were from the South somewhere. I didn't know exactly where. You have that Southern girl charm.
And it's so crazy. I've been in New York 10 years now. So when I go to home Atlanta, they're like, oh, you're so New York, you sound New York, you look New York. And it's so funny because I'm to anyone who lives in New York, I'm so not New York. It's like
you're a refreshing change.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Now, what was a young Charreah like as a little girl?
Oh my gosh. I was so, first of all, I don't think as a girl I acknowledged I was a girl. So I was always like a little bit bossy, and knowing I wanted things a certain way, but very, curious. I loved to read as a child. I loved to be challenged. I was creative, so I have memories of like sitting in the kitchen and painting by myself and playing with Play-Doh. Like I would teach my dolls, and so I would. Both of my parents are educators, and my mom was a teacher growing up. And growing up with her and my brother in our house, it was just like that was sort of the culture. So even in the summers, I always joke that I went to Camp Jackson, because when your mom or when your parent is a teacher, a lot of times you're not going to camp. You're home with them, or they're home with you, which is a blessing. Mm-hmm. And we would, she would give us challenges. If we got too rowdy, we would have to go to the library and get books. And it was it was almost like a punishment. Like if you got too much, go read. But it really became a love of mine. And so I'm forever grateful to her for really fostering a love of learning and reading at a young age, because it definitely sparked me to be curious about the world.
Who would you say were some of your greatest influences growing up?
Well, definitely the women in my family. I come from a family of really strong, outspoken, vivacious, beautiful, spiritual women. So, when you see me, you see them. Loud. I mentioned loud. My mother, my grandmothers, my great grandmothers. My name. I can't ever get arrested because my first name has such a unique spelling that it's like I'm kind of the only one out there. But even in my byline, I do Charreah K Jackson intentionally because my middle name is Katie, after my great grandmother, my mother's mother's mother. And I got to know her. She lived until I was about 12 or 13, and so she was this strong woman who could, had a rifle. She could shoot a straight shot. Mm-hmm. She could catch a squirrel with her bare hands. So really just these powerhouse women who just made me feel like there was nothing I could not do. So I didn't have to go far to see power when it came to women. Of course, the women in my community, my first dance teacher, Miss Michelle, who owned her dance company and taught, the stereotypical suburban ballet, tap, jazz class I was in. But it really, from a young age, my first pediatrician was a woman, Dr. Gray. So in my everyday life growing up, I saw strong Black women, and it was normal to me. So that was what I knew. So I think as I get older, the more I appreciate like how it normalized power and ownership and pursuing your fullest passion. Like it wasn't really a question of if I could do anything, because I had these women in my life. And then from a historical standpoint, I loved Wilma Rudolph. I loved Mae Jemison, who I met this past year. So it was incredible to know that anything was possible, and that being Black and being a woman didn't have to be things that held me back.
I love that. I feel inspired just from you sharing the women that you encountered while growing up.
Yeah. And it's like and the thing is too, sometimes you take it for granted because it's just in front of you. But now I'm like, that was kind of special. It was special.
How do you feel like who you were as a young person and what you were exposed to, these women actually modeling the behavior of what's possible for you as a woman, as a Black woman? How do you feel that has evolved into who you are as an entrepreneur today?
It definitely shaped me. It definitely pushed me. And so even now, because truthfully, as I mentioned, my goal wasn't always entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. But I realized how much power and freedom was in it. And so they really helped me think bigger, push yourself bigger. Like, you could work for somebody else. How could you be doing that? And also, like, I'm a corporate entrepreneur where I do have a full-time job and I'm able to reinvest my personal time and energy to grow a business. And so I think really I've hungrily sought out mentors who have modeled how I could do the same. And so I look at people who have built careers within an organization. I look at Anina Garcia, who, is a big judge on Project Runway and also runs a fashion department at a major magazine. And so I look at people who have sort of diversified their talents across platforms, across different mediums, and ways that they're able to be creative, but also how they tier their team. Because, of course, what I love most about the work you're doing is just that how important it is that we normalize support, because we can live in a culture where if you look at an Instagram feed, it looks like, oh, she does it all herself, and no one does it all themselves. So really, to have anything be its best and biggest, you definitely will have to have support.
Absolutely. I'm all for it. Now, as an example, you're an example of an entrepreneur, sort of what you just mentioned about having your corporate job and then also having this business. The high-profile position that you have is lifestyle and relationship editor at Essence. Let us just say that. But then you have BossBride, or bossbride.com. What would you say your advice is for women wanting to find ways to leverage their job and create a business of their dreams at the same time in the ways that you're doing it?
Absolutely. Well, the first, I think, was you really have to take a real big inventory of your talents first, and then of your time. So by talents, break down all the things you do. And sometimes, for any of us, you get caught up in what am I getting paid to do at my job, which is a small percent of what you actually are doing on the planet. So the things you do for your community, things you do for your family, things you do for your church. What do people come to you for? What are you called on for? What do people just ask for 5 minutes for you to look over? Is it your recipe? Is it to read over their resume? And so really, really owning all the ways of things you do in the world, and then matching that with who gets paid to do what you do for free. Because anything we all love to do, whether it's just tasting cookies, somebody has a job where they professionally get to taste cookies. And so there's a way to monetize any of your talents. And so you really have to know, to be in the biggest contribution you can be on this planet, you have to also maximize your profit. And so I really had to shift my relationship with money before I could shift into really being tapping fully into my entrepreneurial spirit, to realize I'm robbing the planet, I'm robbing my family, I'm robbing my grandbabies when I don't maximize my wealth, when I don't maximize my talents in a way that I'm able to, have an abundance, right? To have a financial blessing that I'm able to bless the people who matter to me. But before I could do any of that, like just taking care of me to make sure, if worst case, if I didn't have this job tomorrow, I would be able to move forward and know that my rent and my bills are going to be paid. And so really taking that inventory first to say, hey, what are my talents? Who gets paid to do what I do? And then really putting into a plan. Before the plan, really taking inventory of your time, because that's what I really had to do. Because for anyone who's out there who does have a full-time job already, for the most part, most of our days are already full. We have work email, like the obligations of the workforce right now is probably the most stretched it's been, where we are expected to do a whole lot on less, and that's across industries, across the world. And so you really will have to be so diligent with how you manage your time. And so I used to work a lot of hours, and I still do, but I'm way more efficient. And so I really had to put processes in place in my day-to-day life so that I'm able to get my work done, that is still done at a level of excellence, and that I'm still able to keep my personal time. And so it definitely requires me to be disciplined. There's, TV shows that I don't get to watch, and I'll catch them at a season. I can binge, I'll give myself that treat once I hit certain goals, because it is a hustle to try and, to build a business while you're also, have a full-time job. So I've done a lot of training to help. I've done there's a business coach I've worked with. His name is Julian Gordon. He has a program called Be Paid, and it's all about helping people who have full-time jobs. How do you also build a business? How do you leverage your talents in a way to still, have a job, but also do the passions that are on your heart? And he says one thing that's so key, and he says, look at your job as your biggest client. Like, it's not like you just put your job to the side. No, you see it as a client, so you serve them well, you make sure the demands are met, you communicate efficiently and effectively, and then once you're doing that, you're able to bring on some additional clients.
Excellent. I love that. That's great advice. And is Julian Gordon?
Yes.
Okay, I'll have to check out his website so we can link to it in the show notes and everyone can find out more about him as well. I'm sure he has a website.
Yes, he does. It's amazing. And he has a free New Year guide. So if it's, and then you could do it any time of the year, but really every year he puts out a free New Year guide, which really helps you get centered. It helps me get centered. So because I'm juggling a lot, I'm really trying my best to be diligent around my schedule, around writing things down. So I have my kind of to-do list coming into the day, coming into the week.
How did you get to a point where you realized that you needed to have a mind shift around money? As you said, just thinking about it differently from the perspective of once you're taken care of, you can take care of so many other things, because some of us sort of miss that and just get scattered when we're trying to, take care of ourselves and then build a business.
Absolutely. And I know we both are, graduates of Momentum, which is a great training.
Yes.
But I think at any point, when you get really clear about what you want out of life, it will require you to ask, what does that take? And so as I started to dream bigger, I realized it was what the financial cost. But really, I had to heal some of like me and money didn't have a great relationship before then. So I had definitely a scarcity around resources. I didn't feel like I had enough, but I also feel like I didn't have what I wasn't enough to get more yet. And so sometimes, for all my waiters out there, well, I'm gonna wait until this happens, till I learn this, till all these untils, instead of just starting to move. And so really seeing the vision for my life, how I want to spend time. I don't have children yet. I plan to have children. So like, how do I want that experience to be? How much money in the bank do I want? And knowing, I'm a woman of faith. And as I've grown spiritually in my relationship with God, I've been able to tap into the fact that there is enough for everybody on this planet. Like I serve an abundant God. And so that means abundance is available for me. And so really starting to heal some of the old ways of money. And again, like I talked about my family and so many great things about family, but also because I am a child, I'm a descendant of enslaved people. For generations, it literally was not enough. And so to be one of those first generations where we do have access to more, even though that might be the physical experience, you're still mentally breaking some of those shackles around money. And so I really had to read more, grow more into my financial abundance and grow more around money. Because one of the things that is honestly surprising to myself is like, I love math. You always hear about like writers who don't like math. I love math growing up. I was in Mu Alpha Theta, which is the math fraternity in high school. Like I did AP calculus. Like I love math, but somehow that did not translate to me loving to learn about money. And I think, as a woman from the South, growing up in church, like we hear this lie around like, money is the root of evil, and it's not. It's the love of money. So when you respect money, and because I didn't have a healthy relationship, I also didn't always respect money. And so when I learned to have a healthier relationship with money and see it as a resource, it's not bad, it's not good, it's not positive, it's not negative, it's just a resource that when you use it respectfully gives you access to have the opportunity, so that I want to be able, down the road, if somebody in my family gets sick, to be able to have the resources to really be able to support and do something about that. So I really had to dream bigger before I could have more, because for a long time it was enough just to be able to pay my bills. I felt like, okay, I'm good. Whereas now that's not enough for where I want in the next season.
And now it sounds like you're not, for lack of a better word, afraid to even want more. Because I think that's something some of us struggle with too. It's just like, my bills are paid, I should be grateful. I'm not going to even desire more.
Absolutely. And it's like, who are you robbing, when you do that? And I had to realize I was robbing myself. Like I was robbing me. And that's the thing too. I talked about working with Julian, and we're in a mastermind. He has a mastermind, and I did for 2016. And so each week we would do a call, or each month. And so in one of our calls, he's like, what's the one area in your life where you feel you're blocked. That you just, you're not moving forward the way you want to move. And in my head came finances. And he said, I want to tell you what the block is. And he was like, you're the block. So whatever block you have in your life, you're the block. And for so long, I felt like sometimes it was other people, I wasn't getting the money I should. I wasn't getting paid what I should, like all these other factors. And versus saying, well, have you fully negotiated for yourself? Have you fully maximized the talents that you've been given? And so once I realized that everything, and also in anyone at any point, you could choose differently. So if you are in a situation that you don't feel you're financially where you want to be, you can always choose differently. And so once I started to really take back the power in my financial life, and even now, like, to be honest, I signed up for this investment account that I should not have. I couldn't really afford it at the time, but it felt like all my friends, are having this, and a friend's like, oh, my financial advisor, you can go and meet and talk with him. And all of a sudden I'm in this investment account that actually hasn't, gotten me results, and, has lost money in that account. And now I feel stuck because they're like, oh, you have to keep investing or you'll lose your money. I'm like, actually, at any point I can say this doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. And so who do I need to meet with to have a different result and get my money out of this account? So I've started that process. And so I really had to come into myself at a higher level to be able to have those conversations, to always know that I can advocate for myself, and that I'm worth it, but also the life that I'm called to live is worth me maximizing how much money I have in the bank.
Awesome. And being willing to make mistakes or give yourself permission to try something. You tried this investment account, but then make mistakes and then know, as you said, you can make another choice.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes we end up feeling stuck or sitting in a space that we shouldn't be or could move away from just by making another choice.
Absolutely.
What would you say are some of the tools or one of the tools that you use to really to really adjust your relationship with money? I know you're in the mastermind, and it sounds like Julian is a great coach. Were there any books or anything or websites or any other tools that or maybe even just a mindset that you really feel like was crucial for you?
Absolutely. I really think it's really having conversations with people who are living a life that you desire, or, peers and people who are 5-10 steps ahead of you. Mm-hmm. And so I really have spent time with women who are doing great things. One of those women is Tanya Rapley, who's the creator of My Fab Finance. You can check out her website. She has great resources. She has a great Facebook group. Nicole Roberts-Jones is a friend of mine, and we've talked about like how she set up her business. Her business is The Fierce Factor. You can just Google her, Nicole Roberts-Jones, join her Facebook group, which really has a lot of great women and a lot of great resources. And so really, to up-level my bank account, I also up-leveled my circle and started really having more meaningful conversations, because sometimes we know people, but we never actually talk to them about their life and, get their insight. And so I really have worked to activate my network at a higher level. I do a course called Build Your $1 Billion Network, because like really your network is your net worth, and it's cliche because it's so true. And so I've worked to better network so that I can strengthen my net worth in the years to come.
And you said you have a course called Build Your $1 Billion Network?
Yeah, it's actually a live workshop. I'm working to tape it so that it's an online course.
Okay. So where can people find that somewhere now, or you'll let us know when?
Well, you know what? It's funny. My first course is actually launching January. So yes.
Perfect. So you have to let me know once it's up or once you have a link.
No, absolutely. And I'll tell you about it now, or in the podcast at some point, because it's really about, and the thing is, things are connected, right? So I had to heal before I could really get to my relationship with money. I had to heal any other past pains that were blocking me from my abundance. And so I really went through a transformative year this year, really just working to like shine a light in all the dark corners in my life. Like, what have I not addressed that might be holding me back? And so, you don't think, grieving my parents' divorce 30 years after they broke up, but it really was an opportunity for me to take back power. Because anytime you're losing power in any area of your life, it will suck life out of everything else. Mm-hmm. And so the reason I have a healthier relationship with money is that I have a healthier relationship with myself and my self-worth. So anything that has come into your life that has sucked your self-worth, it's not surprising that shows up in financial debt, because you have a debt somewhere else. So I had a emotional debt, which was showing up in financial debt.
And how do you discover that? Is it just self-examination, or was it through the things that you mentioned, like the courses or excuse me, the coaching and working with other individuals who are a few paces ahead?
It's a combination, right? Because I mean, you first have to be willing to look and ask yourself what's working, what's working, and then the bigger question sometimes, what's not working. And I think, especially at any point of the year, it's great just to slow down enough to say what's not working for me, because we live in a culture that is making billionaires off of your distraction, and so it's in a capitalist society, it is in the interest of money makers that you be distracted. Because if I get you busy watching somebody else's life, if I get you busy thinking you're not enough, then I can sell you the perfect product to fix you. I can sell you things if you're not sure that you're whole. And so, of course, it is taking those steps to really do things like this, to say, you know what, something she said resonated with me. When she talked about healing from her parents' divorce, it made me realize I'm still mad at my dad, or whatever those things are. So really being courageous enough, to ask yourself what's not working, or what am I feeling? And sometimes we'd rather numb what's not working than actually go and address it. And so that's when you can see like all the food ads. Like I did a cleanse. I've done a cleanse twice this year. And only in those cleanses is when I've noticed how much food is marketed to us, of course, because I'm not eating. So I'm like,
right, right.
Everything is food advertising, chocolate, hamburgers. But I could just see the culture because I had kind of come out of it a little bit. And so, but to answer your question, really, in any of it, there's many ways you can access it, but first being willing to have a conversation with yourself, and then taking that step to say what support is available for me.
Yes, and that willingness to be vulnerable is really a major part of it. Because so many of us spend time, as you said, we see all of these things, whether it's social media or otherwise, of what everyone else is doing, and it seems like they're doing it on their own. And then to be able to take a moment of stillness and have this reflection on yourself and say, as you said, what's not working, when you think that everyone else has everything working, which isn't true, right? It takes courage and vulnerability.
Absolutely. And to that piece, because I work on relationships content and done a lot of relationship coaching and writing, people at least once a week, someone's like, girl, you found my husband yet? And it's like, to be in a sexy, outrageous, amazing relationship will ask for you to be your most vulnerable self. And sadly, vulnerability has gotten like a bad rap. Like we see vulnerability as something weak, but really to be vulnerable is your strength. My vulnerability, my softness is my biggest strength. And so you want to get in a space of knowing when I'm courageous enough to let people really see how I'm doing and be honest with myself, that's when the magic really can happen. But if you're shielding your emotions, then you really won't have the sexy life you were called for. And so I really allowing people, even the little stuff, like saying when someone asks you how your day is doing, come off of automatic. Don't just say fine and your leg is broke. You can say, oh, today has been a little bit rough, I'm gonna make it through. Or you can be honest, but every time you lie to someone else, you also have to lie to yourself. And so when I say I'm fine and I'm not even able to heal whatever's not fine, because I won't even face it.
Right. Now tell us about BossBride and your vision for it, because all the things that you talk about really are boss moves, in my opinion. People may not see it that way, but being vulnerable, getting clear about what's not working, all those things to me are boss moves.
Absolutely. And BossBride is really about merging your personal and professional pursuits. It's really about taking the most effective strategies of a boss, which is to be an incredible delegator, to be strategic, and then taking the elements of a woman on her wedding day, living in the moment, joyful, connected to the people that matter. And so it's really a mentality. It's not a destination. It's like every day you can be a boss bride, whether you've been divorced for 10 years, whether you're newly on the single scene dating, whether you are married and happy in that relationship. But it's about being courageous to know this is not to be cliche like, but this is our shot. This is your moment. And you get to live the extraordinary life that you've been called to live. It's really about creating resources for a new woman in a new world. So the realities of what we face as women today, we talk a lot about the opportunities that professional women have, but that also means there are challenges that our mothers and our grandmothers did not know. My grandmother's dream job, her dream was to have a job, and she was grateful for that for her family. She was grateful to be able to send her kids to school. And now we're sitting here like, so do we want to go to Thailand or Bali? Like we have this a wealth of opportunity, but it also means we need a wealth of resources and support so we don't get lost in it. So BossBride really was birthed out of that desire to support women on their love and career journey, because I was doing a lot of work with Dress for Success and a lot of organizations around career development. And I also was doing a lot of work around relationships. And there's so much overlap in those areas of our life, because you're not one person at work and another at home. You're one person everywhere you go. So how do you create strategies for success for everywhere you go? And so it was, BossBride was this last year was, I worked on a book deal, and I have a book deal with St. Martin's Press.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
So excited. I was going to ask about that. That's amazing. Yes. Is that for next year? Is that 2017?
Well, it's due 2017 and it'll come out on the top of 2018. And
awesome.
So I'm really excited about that. And one of the, we do have a community. If you go to bossbridetribe.com, it's an online community, a Facebook group of incredible women around the world. We'd love for you to join. And we really just pushing each other to be our best at home and at work. And so it's really about that really having success and fulfillment in every area of your life. So it's been exciting. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm launching an online course to really help women fall in love with their life in 6 weeks. So it's called Happily Ever Now. And it really guides you through how do you create the life that you're called for, but how do you attract the love and success you crave into your life. And one of my favorite modules is called Build Your Love and Success Squad. So we talk about support is sexy, and it's so essential that you have clearly defined who's your squad, who is your support. And so also too, sometimes when you take your inventory, you're able to see, well, what spots are missing. And so because I took my inventory, I could see the areas where I did not have support. Mm-hmm. And so it's so essential that we do that. So if you are interested in this New Year course, I'm really excited about it. I just filmed some of the videos this past weekend. You could just go to readyformyhappy.com and get information for the course. So it's designed to kick off January so you could fall in love with your life by Valentine's Day, but you could take it at any point in the year. So I'm excited.
Excellent. So just to make sure, bossbridetribe.com is for people to sign up to be a part of the BossBride tribe.
Yes.
And then for Happily Ever Now is readyformyhappy.com.
Absolutely. And you can go to, yep.
And you can go to?
If you just go to bossbride.com, you can get, either of those as well. But those are the two places as well.
Okay. And for everyone listening, I will absolutely have all of the links on Charreah's show notes page, but just wanted to say them again in case anybody wants to go right this very second, which I wouldn't blame you.
Yes, come. We've having a good time. The tribe is a good time. It's international. We've had women from all over join. So it's been really insightful. I think that's the other point. Like one of the reasons I wanted to do BossBride as the book, just because I was encountering so many women. Like we think our life is everybody's life, and that's not the case. I met this BossBride in India, and she was saying, Charreah, the most radical thing I ever did was to marry for love, because she was in a culture where arranged marriage still was the reality. So she goes to college and meets this man, and it's a big deal in her family that it was like, we don't know him. And so for me, it helped me appreciate, the idea that I do live in a culture where it's pretty normal that I can pick my own mate. But also it makes me think, well, what is special in that culture that you do have your family and friends vet somebody you might want to spend your life with, because they may see things you don't see. So definitely about having those conversations.
And the site, we should say, though, is not just for brides.
Absolutely. It's for any. And the thing is, I talking about this in the book, right? I went through a breakup this past year. I was in a 7-year relationship, and literally the day I got my contract for my agent got the contract from the publisher for BossBride for the book, is the day I had my breakup. So the biggest BossBride move I made thus far probably in my life is to walk away from something that had run its course. And in love, like, thank you for what you brought to my life. But I also believe that, in this next season, as I've grown, there might be room for something else for me and for you too. And so sometimes the most courageous thing you do is just to let go or to do nothing. And so even in the Happily Ever Now course, there's a module just on the power of letting go, because you have to create space for that abundance we talk about. You have to be willing to open your hands up to receive. But if you're closed and your hands are in a tight fist, you won't be able to receive what might be in your next season.
Now, how do you get to the point where after a 7-year relationship that you get the what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of the courage to let go. Is that because of your own self-awareness as well of what's working and what isn't working? Because some people, again, might just stay because it's either comfortable or you don't want to shake things up or, you know, without you going into everything that happened, of course.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm a relationship girl and, you know, and I think it's important, you know, I'm also very clear that everything I go through has purpose. And so even in that moment, you know, of course, it's like, yay, I got a book deal about relationships when I'm walking. Like, it wasn't like a parade, but I knew I was covered. But to your question of like, how do you know? You know, and it's back to a momentum quote, right? What are you pretending not to know? Because we always know. We always know. Now, did I think at certain points in that relationship I was going to get married to this person? Absolutely. But was there an awareness that as I grew, that there were things that I wanted that I wasn't receiving? Yeah. And so it wasn't necessarily about how much time you put in. The bigger question is how much more time do you have to give to something? And so for me, it was not, I knew I had given it my best shot, but I also knew I couldn't afford, it would cost me too much to keep trying to change something that actually might not even need to be changed. He wasn't broken. We weren't broken. And I think that's the other part. We live in a culture that lets the ending tell the story. And so I talked about really working to heal from my parents' breakup, and they broke up 30 years ago. And I was a baby. But one of the reasons that had been so difficult for me is because I had let the divorce define who they were versus saying, thank you that these two people came together, saw enough in each other to get married, had my brother, had me. And so it didn't have to last forever for it to have had a purpose. And so it's funny. Two summers ago, I was home at my grandmother's house in South Carolina. The house my mother grew up in, and came across my parents' wedding album. And the first time I saw it that summer, it was a little uncomfortable because there was a part of me that was looking like, I want to kind of warn them, like, this thing is going to get crazy. Not even crazy, but like, actually, it's not going to have the ending you thought it would. And then a year later, after I really worked to heal and from it and talked with both of them about the experience and realized, you know what, it all worked out for my good, and I can be grateful for it, even if and also as I acknowledge my pain. But a year later, I was at my grandmother's house, looked at that same wedding album, and I could enjoy it because I said, thank you that it happened. So instead of me being mad that this relationship wasn't meant to be forever, I can say, thank you that it happened. Thank you for the lessons I got out of it. I can choose to take the good and let go of what didn't work and know that all of it was still a lesson for me. So as I've shifted my mentality to see life as I'm here to learn. We're all on this planet to learn what we came to learn, and what are you going to get out of it, versus it being looking to have a movie that's just this scene that doesn't grow, or this perfect ending. And so I didn't let the ending rob the story. You know, I got a book for everything. So anyone who is in that space, Conscious Uncoupling is a really good book, but it really opens up on the reality, like of how we can honor things that have become complete. So even though I say breakup, honestly, I started saying, you know what, actually the relationship completed itself. It ran its course. It's really symbolic too, because it was 7 years. It was a year completion. Like we did what we were supposed to do in that season for each other. And then, you know what, I can step away knowing that there's no such thing as like, there's no lack when it comes to love. So there's enough love for both of us to find great love again, if we so choose. If you so choose, and 6 months later, you know, I did meet somebody else. It's still early, but when I was courageous enough to step away and to really open myself up to say, what is my vision for my personal life and my relationships? I wrote out a list called The Man I Will Marry. Mm-hmm. And then lo and behold, you know, within weeks later, this man I was not dating, was not looking, shows up. And I look at my list and I say, I see you, God.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That is powerful. You better preach, Charreah. Listen. No,
I was not planning to tell all my business, but, you know, that's what it is.
That's what happens when people get on here, which makes me so excited about the show. Thank you for sharing all your business. And also, I love what you said, too, about just the ending not robbing the story. And I think that's definitely true of relationships, but also when we think about our career and other things that we're doing, for those of us who might be going through, you know, a transition in a career, or something doesn't fulfill you in the same way that it used to. And as we mentioned earlier, thinking, well, I should be grateful to have this, or I should fill in the blank, but you've come to a point where maybe that part of your journey is ending and it's time to look for something else or to incorporate something else, as you did. You have your big career and the things that you're doing, but you found a way to incorporate some other things as part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what would you say your advice is for anyone who's trying to overcome the challenge of balancing career and personal life, like a boss bride? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, well, I think the biggest mistake we often make is feeling like they're separate. Like you have one life, you are one person. And so you really have to create your life from that space of like, I get 7 days, I get 24 hours each day. Like how I allot my time. And so really you want to start from the end in mind. Meaning like what you want. And one of the activities in Happily Ever Now in our course is write your eulogy. Write it, like write it in the voices, like, and like be like, and I don't say that in sadness. I say that in joy. Like when you leave this planet, because we are all, mortal. And so when you leave this planet, how did you want to leave it? What is the legacy you want to live? And sometimes when you have the courage to write it all out, it'll help you realize what's really important to you. And B, that time is our most precious asset. And so really, I think we can't afford to get lost in any of it. You can't afford to get lost in your work because your life is bigger than just your work. You weren't sent here just to be a machine. And so I think really being honest with yourself about what's most important and what are the priorities in this season. And so I break my year off into seasons because there are seasons that might require you to be busier at work than at home. And so I love Michelle Obama talks about their trade-offs. She doesn't see it as, necessarily losing anything, but she's willing to trade off. So I might say, you know what, I might not be able to continue my weekly brunches with my girls because, my youngest child is in soccer or my man just won the presidency. So, what this great career I had, I will reorient myself to a new reality. So sometimes what's happening when we feel stressed and so stretched is because we've not acknowledged that a certain season has expired. And so there will be things that how you used to spend your time that may not work in this new season of your life. And that's okay. So of course, having a full-time job, writing a book, it has taken a lot of my extra time this year. So there's a lot of things that I would love to used to do, people I used to spend time with that I've not been able to, but I communicate that. And to really be a boss bride, your communication skills have to be exceptional because you have to be honest with yourself first about what's realistic for you to do. And so you're not just a yes machine, but you're thoughtful about how you spend your time and your yes means something. So a lot of times we struggle with saying no because we feel like it's taking us away. But when you say no, it makes your yes stronger. Because if I say no to 4 other events, that means I'm going to give you my best self at the one thing I do go to. I'm going to look good. I'm going to be together versus being depleted. And I've had those seasons of depleting myself, running myself into the ground, running myself raggedy. And you see a picture of yourself and you're like, who is that? Because you're just tired. Versus really saying, actually, the first person I give myself to is me. And so the essential part, being a boss bride is really choosing that I'm first. I'm it. The love of my life is me. My biggest boss is me. And so I will take care of me in a way that I'm able to give to the world give the world my best self.
One of the things you've spoken about very openly, too, is beating cancer and getting a second chance at life, which we're also blessed to have you here for sure.
Amen.
How did that experience change you? And what do you feel like you learned about yourself through that part of your journey?
Absolutely. I was 19. I was a sophomore in college. And I was just home for Christmas break. And I had this one, when you really slow down enough to look at life, it wasn't until years later that I was like, oh, my grandma had saved my life because I had this little knot in my groin and my doctor had said, lymph nodes swell down, nothing really to worry about. And then my grandmother was a retired emergency room nurse. And I said, Grandma, will you look at this? And she said, baby, go get it checked out. But it was like, well, that didn't occur to me at first, just to go get it checked out. And I went, had a biopsy, and it was diagnosed as Hodgkin's lymphoma, cancer of the lymph nodes. We caught it early. So I was very fortunate. And it was a very treatable cancer with one of the the highest survival rates. But it still is real, and when you get diagnosed with serious health conditions, a lot of times you don't know. I didn't know when I was diagnosed, when someone looks at me and says you have cancer. I didn't know if it was in every cell in my body or just one spot. And so that probably was the darkest moment of not knowing. And so it definitely reminded me that information is power. But I learned at a very young age not to take life for granted. And so it was definitely traumatic, but it also was one of my biggest blessings, because the truth is, for all of us, tomorrow is not promised. And so we easily can start to get in a routine where we say later, later, later. But it made me urgent about living at a young age. I did, you think stereotypically, in your 20s, you're just like have fun. But I'm like, no, life is not a game. Mm-hmm. So it really was a motivator. And then I had to heal from it, right? Because a lot of times when you go through trauma, people treat your physical wounds, but we don't always see the emotional wounds. So outside it looked good, but I had deep emotional wounds that I had to heal 10 years later, because through that experience, I had really picked up a belief that, I might not have enough time to live. And so I was gulping down life. When I talk about that exhaustion, it was tied to that, feeling like, okay, I got to get it in. Tomorrow's not promised. And so I really got access to a new belief that I will have enough time to live out the mission for my life. And so then I sleep at night. I always love to sleep, but I sleep every night. I don't deplete myself, because I know I'll have enough time to do what I'm here for. And I trust. And then I can tell the universe and tell God what my vision for my life is. So I've declared I will dance at my 80th birthday party. Mm-hmm. And it's very clear, because it's like, I'm not just alive at 80. Like, I'm dancing, I'm up, I still got rhythm, my body works. Like, that is my vision. But then when you have the courage to have a vision, your vision will look back at you and say, well, what are you willing to do for that to happen? So that's when I'm like, okay, I have to live healthier. Okay, I have to go to the gym more. Okay, I have to act like I want to be here at 80. And so really back to sort of having the courage to dream big, and then letting your dream pull you forward.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things you recently posted about was doing it afraid. And that might have been in relation to where you might have been taping the video for your course that you just mentioned. Now that you told about that. Good. Yeah. This idea of doing it afraid. When is there a time where you had to muster up the courage to do something that may have terrified you? And why do you think it's important for all of us, especially as women, to sometimes have to do it afraid?
And the funny part is, I'm like, I went through a season where I wasn't afraid anymore, because I wasn't trying new things. And so if you can't really remember the last time you felt afraid, it's time to step, like we say, like step on a skinny branch. Mm-hmm. But step out there and really be willing to try something new, because you can't fail. But to your point, you already my most recent one was this past weekend, filming some of the videos for the Happily Ever Now course. And it was scary for a lot of reasons. First, it snowed on Saturday, so I was supposed to be at a studio, and because of the snow and the ice, I didn't feel comfortable. My videographer and I both live in Harlem, having us travel downtown and possibly get stuck. Like, I just felt like this isn't the safest thing, but I still want to shoot today because it's about to be Christmas, all these things. And so I said, well, just come over. So literally, I flipped my mattress up on my wall. I just said, we will film it in my bedroom. Flip the mattresses up, rearrange my room, and all of a sudden it's go time. And so, it's one thing. It was scary for a lot of different reasons. I was scared this summer. I went surfing for the first time. And I mean, I'm not the strongest swimmer. And it really blew my mind, because surfing was such a life lesson of how fear works. Because when you're on that board, so you go out and then you're like, the waves are coming, you're like, you can't, and you're facing the other way, so you can't even really see the waves. So somebody else is telling you when to pop up.
Right, you're trying to catch the wave.
Yeah, so you're like you can't really look that way, because if you look back, you won't catch a wave. Like, all the ways you catch a wave is how you win in life. You can't look back, and then you have to be willing to fall. Because there's a thing, like, there are people who went out and stayed on the board, because you can just stay on the board and never try to stand, and the water will propel you back to shore. So you won't go underwater, but you also will never stand up. And so I saw women who weren't willing to fall. So I fell in the water 3 times, full under, soaked before I caught my first wave. But that moment told me, you know what, nothing could take the fact that I caught a wave. So it's like, and guess what? Every time I fell and went under that water, I got right back up. But so I was looking at myself, but also looking at what fear looked like in other people. Like, yes, it was safer, but they will walk away and never have caught a wave. And so that was just a lesson and a reminder, like, you really have nothing to lose. So every time I am afraid, I always ask myself, what's the worst that could happen? Because a lot of times we feel the anxiety starts to come over us. We're like, what's the worst that could happen? It could suck. Nobody might like it. I could bomb. Okay, that's the worst thing that could happen. I could try something new and it not work out. If that's the worst.
Right. That's why I tell people, will you die from this? You will not die from this. You got to try.
And then, like, what's the best could happen? I could change somebody's life. And then once that happens, the fear starts to subside. And even with the writing this book, I mean, I had writer's block for a long time, but really that was fear again. But what helps me keep getting out of my own way is remember, none of it's about me. Like, somebody's waiting on me. Somebody's waiting on you. Every one of us has a different assignment and gift. And so how would the world have been different if you didn't step out and just say, you know what, I will do it afraid. I will do this podcast. I will call these women. Like, you do it effortlessly. And so, remembering that it's actually not about me takes the pressure off of me, because I'm like, oh, this isn't for you anyway.
Right. It's bigger than you. And I just love this visual too of you. I'm going to use you as my visual of getting up on a surfboard and catching the wave. That's a really powerful visual for people to think about. I think, especially as we go into the new year, the end of this year. Have you been laying down on the board the whole year, or are you ready to finally stand up? That is a great analogy, Charreah. That's really powerful, girl. That's why you do what you do. So just a couple more questions. I so appreciate your time. I appreciate your yes today. You wrote a quote, "You may not be where you want to be, but baby, you are not where you used to be."
Amen.
Now, where did you used to be, and how do you feel like you've grown as a person?
Girl, you want to take me and listen. I used to live in my head. I used to be a lot of places. Oh my God. I used to think I was my work. I used to think, I used to be disconnected from, I used to be afraid of my strengths and afraid of my power. Because I felt, well, I don't want to make people uncomfortable. And you talked about how I was as a child. I always have been a big personality. And so, and I remember as a child, I think for any big personality, at some point, someone told you to tone it down. And so I used to be conscious of, like, how is my presence impacting other people? And then I started to really ask myself, well, what does that cost me? And so, I love myself. I love the person I've always, even in my sort of most, I don't want to say damaged, in some areas where I was the most lost, I still love that version of myself. Because even I used to be someone who didn't know if she could sustain heartache. I mean, people often ask, well, how did you end up a relationships editor? And I mean, they're the sexy answers. I wrote my thesis in college about relationships. I've always been interested in relationships. But if I really break it down, it's like, well, my parents' marriage didn't work, and my aunt's marriage didn't work. And I saw the impact that had on them as women. And I was like, oh, this love thing ain't nothing to play with. And so really what got me here was being afraid. Was being afraid of heartache. So I wasn't like just raw. It's like, oh, I got to figure this out for me and the rest of us, because it does only take one relationship to change the track of your life. But knowing the other side, that love is so beautiful and worth it, and you're stronger than you think you are. And so even going through this, going through a relationship that ended, it's been such a gift in a lot of ways for me to, like, it's like you spend so much time wondering if you could sustain heartache, and your heart is so bigger than you gave it credit for. And so, from where I was to where I am now was like someone who let my fears run me, and so I was someone whose fears were holding on to her, and now I hold on to my fears. So it's not that the fears evaporated. I just grab them. I say, well, you don't control me. You don't run my day. You don't run my life.
And a lot of time our fear is just trying to keep us, as is ego, right? Just trying to keep us safe.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like, thank you for trying to protect me. I got it.
Absolutely.
You sit over here. Now, where would you say that you want to be, to go with the rest of that quote? You may not be where you want to be. Where would you say, we know where you are. Where do you feel like you want to be?
That's good. I want to be, and it's funny. I didn't bring it in. I have Danielle Laporte has this planner called "What Will I Do to Feel How I Want to Feel." But it's all about how do you want to feel. So you really set like each month, each day, like what do I want to feel this week? So passionate, present, fulfilled. I want to feel free in every area of my life. And so there's things that I feel like I might be a 5 or 6 out of 10 that I want to get to 10s, and just sort of sustain. But so it's not necessarily a physical place, but it's a place. And I'm grateful that I've grown so much because I wake up pretty much calm and at peace. But I want to feel a higher level of control over my day, over my time, over my energy, over my resources. And then also grow spiritually at a higher level. This year has probably been my biggest spiritual growth year where I've encountered God at a higher level, where I've surrendered my life completely. I used to surrender parts of my life, like, oh God, take care of this, but I'll pick a job, I'll pick a man, I'll pick an apartment, and I hope you bless it, versus saying, send me where you want me to go. And so, really, I want to be in sync with God, with spirit. Would be the ultimate, like where I want to be is like every step is in sync.
I love that. Now, what has entrepreneurship taught you about yourself as a woman?
Support is essential.
Amen.
Amen. It's taught me that I know more than I give myself credit for, that I'm more ready than I gave myself credit for, that you don't have to be perfect to start, that you're enough right now, that somebody needs what you have to offer right now. Entrepreneurship has taught me there's so many ways. So, because again, there's so many great resources out here. And one of the biggest things is everything has value. Everyone has value. So as you grow in your business, you'll start to, like, sometimes when you have a more focused day job, you're easier to say, well, this is my core group, so this is what I should be focused on. But when you're an entrepreneur, everything and everybody could be a resource in a larger way.
If you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Only one. Well, does everyone say their mom? I mean, like, I feel like
it ranges. Some people say family. Some people say an old teacher that actually told them they couldn't be what they wanted to be. The answers always vary.
Do you ever let people have? Okay, I'm gonna just be. This is the important thing. Don't ask for permission, so I will give 2. Okay. My mom, of course, just for being my foundation, introducing me to God, teaching me to pray, telling me I was beautiful, telling me I was worthy, so that I went into the world with a certain level of confidence. And then my college professor, Yana Grace Lamb, at Howard University, who really single-handedly, I think, really catapulted my media career. She helped me get my first internship at Upscale Magazine with Joyce Davis. She would look over, she was my advisor for my thesis, helping me write my thesis, writing cover letters. So she really was this angel in my life in college that really shepherded me through to start my career. And so I would say those 2. But I'm so fortunate that this question is so hard, because I've had so many incredible people pour into me. Even like when I was in Atlanta a few weekends ago, I went out with Joyce and then also Mitzi Miller and Denise Milner. I've listened to both of I know them, but listen to their Support is Sexy podcast. And there is so much richness in having support. So there's nothing I've wanted to do that somebody else hasn't done. And I'm not asking them, can you give me some insight and support?
Excellent. That was good. That was worth it. Those 2 and all those beautiful women that you mentioned, that was definitely worth it. So before you go, and again, I so appreciate your time. Tell us how we can support you. Your websites, just repeat them for us. Anything you want us to be on the lookout for. And as I said, I'll have links to everything on your show notes page.
Absolutely. Well, of course, come join our free community at bossbridetribe.com. And of course, head to bossbride.com just to get inside overview on the book that's coming and just content really and resources for women. And you also can get your copy of the Boss Bride Bill of Rights, which is really permission slips for a modern woman to be reminded of what your rights and what you deserve out of this life. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Charreah. And so, yes, I would love to engage with the Support is Sexy community, and support is so very sexy. So any way I can support you, I'm here.
Excellent. And before you go, Charreah, you've given us such wonderful advice already, but a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners.
I would say prioritize your peace and your passion. So don't give yourself your leftovers in this season. Don't give yourself away to everything else and you never said, what really makes me happy? What really makes me smile? I want you to go for your happily ever now. You can join us if you're ready at the online course, readyformyhappy.com, which is an incredible 6-week course to help you do just that and find your happy place and move in.
Move in. I love it. Charreah K. Jackson. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hold on sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thank you. I had a good time.
Good. Hold on just a second. All right. Thank you so much for listening to that episode with Charreah K. Jackson. I hope you enjoyed it. And now the challenge is for you to do at least one thing. Take one thing from the episode, commit to doing it, and make it happen today. Also, be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com, search Charreah, CHARREAH, so you can get all of the resources in her show notes and see all of the things that she refers to in this episode. There will be links there so you will know exactly where to go. And if this is your first time listening to the Support is Sexy podcast, or you've been listening all the while, know that I appreciate you. But what I really want you to do is make sure you subscribe. So whether you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher or even in Google Play, make sure you subscribe. This way you won't miss an episode. You'll get an update 5 days a week. Every time we launch a new episode, you won't miss a thing. So be sure to go there, subscribe. We'll be there for you and you will be there for us. I'll really appreciate that. So now you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.